Now, all of a sudden, we can integrate that data, get it in a more usable platform, and be more proactive when it comes to our biosecurity. And we can see when deviations occur to the rules we have in place. And be able to react to those versus maybe we have an outbreak and then are going back through the data on the backside, trying to understand, well, what went wrong versus maybe knowing upfront.
Welcome to the Swine Health Blackbelt Podcast, the latest swine health research digested for you. My name is Dr. Clayton Johnson. I'm the host of the podcast. And joining me this week in our illustrious podcast studios is Dr. Erin Kettelkamp. Dr. Kettelkamp is a veterinarian with the Swine Veterinary Center up in St. Peter, Minnesota. Erin, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's always a pleasure to have a former Illini on the show with me. We'll stay out of the Illini sports discussion for a little bit, but Erin, in case folks out there maybe haven't had the pleasure to meet you, why don't you start with an introduction for the audience?
Sure. Thanks for having me on today, Clayton. As you mentioned, I work for Swine Vet Center. I am originally an Illinois grad, and so got transplanted up north after I graduated. And so I've been up here now the last 4 years, practicing kind of in the upper Midwest. And so spend a lot of time working with clients throughout Minnesota and also in surrounding states. While I do spend quite a bit of time focusing on traditional health and production, a lot of my focus has been supporting our clientele with their biosecurity endeavors. And so on farm, whether it's outbreak investigations, filtration assessments, holistic biosecurity, and a big piece of that has been transport biosecurity as well.
Stop disease in its tracks. Improve biosecurity compliance and reduce disease risk with Farm Health Guardian. Why choose Farm Health Guardian? Automate downtime and health status management for large systems. Get biosecurity breach alerts for trucks and trailers. Prevent unauthorized access to your barns with controlled entry technology. And speed up disease investigations with automated traceback reports. Do biosecurity differently. Visit us at Booth Fee 104 at World Pork Expo.
Erin, you and I come from a pretty similar tree. I know you got to work with Dr. Jim Lowe quite a bit when you were at the university, and you really kind of started your biosecurity journey when you were a student. That was when you and I first got connected, and you've built quite a reputation for having a good understanding of biosecurity and how to practically apply the concepts. And I know today we're here to talk about transportation biosecurity. So if you would kind of level set the audience, what does a gold standard transportation biosecurity program look like in 2025?
Yeah, for sure. And certainly it depends on the system, on the infrastructure that you have in place. I think there's a lot of ways to do it well today. It depends on the resources that you have at your fingertips. Most of what I like to do is focus on controlling what we can control. And so there tends to be a lot of unknowns, especially relating to transportation biosecurity, especially working with other third parties, contractors, some of those things. And so the more I can work with in-house is probably from a big picture standpoint, what I prefer to do. We tend to have more control over those processes and procedures, infrastructure of our building sites and things like that. And so a lot of that goes into how we can manage transporting our hogs, whether it's from internal locations or internal to external, and trying to piece together that and whatever works best logistically and is most cost effective today. And so if I had to pick, I'd love to keep it all internal, especially for all my internal movements. Maybe anything touching my sow farms, going out to downstream would be my first preference. And so to me, that looks like if I can have an internal truck wash facility that I might maintain and manage and can control how those trailers are handled in between loads. And certainly as a better benefit, if I can own that fleet of trailers, that's even better, because then I have a lot more say over how, when, why, and where they're getting washed and stored. And then from there, if I can build that on and have my own internal trucking system too, and so where the tractor itself would actually be owned internally, that also adds another layer of control on where they've been and where they're going to go in between all of the movements that they're doing today. So if I had to start somewhere, that's what I would do, is if I could create as much control and make that internal, that's my preference to start.
How do you think about audits related to the transport biosecurity program, Erin, either at the truck wash location and or at the farm? What's an appropriate level of frequency? Who should do those? How can you optimize that part?
I love taking a layered approach. When I spend time in truck washes, I really like being there with whoever's there day to day, and trying to get a good understanding and feel for what actually goes on. Are we doing the things that we're saying that we're doing? Meeting with a manager there that might be, in control of some of their own internal auditing. Maybe there's a supervisor or something above them that has a series of audits that they conduct internally. And then from there, layering on a third party approach, I think is always awesome in terms of an auditing procedure. And so I like, to be able to come in on a semi-annual basis, maybe even quarterly, whatever that could look like, to add some fresh perspective and following up on those projects or conversations that are going on. But I think a lot of the day-to-day stuff kind of comes down to whoever is in leadership and overseeing some of the truck washes or on farm. And it goes both ways there too. And so they might have their internal checks that they're doing on a daily basis. For example, if I've got a team of people washing trailers, sometimes it's helpful to have a supervisor or a lead, let's say, go through and check that trailer before it moves on into the next disinfection steps, and make sure that whoever was washing it didn't miss anything. And then that can snowball from there and build on that process. And maybe there's other things that we do diagnostically to help us verify whether something's considered clean or dirty at that point.
Yeah. A lot of work, but to your point, we want to control what we can control. And while the trailer is at the washing facility or at the farm, we can do a lot of audits. One of the challenges I run into, Erin, is the gap in the middle, right? We can do a tremendous job with getting the trailer clean at the truck wash, and maybe even do a good job at the farm with loading and unloading. But there's a heck of a long time that these very valuable animals are on that trailer and en route from one location to another, that to me, a lot of times is a huge black box. Do we have opportunities as an industry to improve that gap in the middle and better understand what's going on, have better control over the actual transport process itself?
Yeah, those are great comments, Clayton, and you're absolutely right. I'd say today, a lot of the times we know when trailers show up to a wash. We hopefully know when they leave and are trusting the fact that they completed a good wash during that time period. I would even say even before an animal gets on there, there's a lot of gray area before it arrives to destination A. On, is it going to go stop at Casey's down the road? Where's the trucker going to go take it? Are they going to go pull off, on a major highway, somewhere in between? Are there opportunities to even contaminate our trailer before another animal steps foot on there? And so that's a huge gray zone unless we happen to have any GPS tracking specifically in the trailer, even separately from the tractor cab or semi truck that's pulling it on a given day. And then absolutely, and same thing, hopefully that mystery is less in question when our animals get on there. Hopefully they're going from point A directly to point B without a whole lot of stops in between. But routes can become important, especially with high health loads. I probably don't want to take my gilt straight through central Iowa, if I can avoid that route at all costs, let's say. And so I think as we move into an era where we're looking at a lot of data and using a lot of technology at our fingertips, we have a lot of tracking devices that we carry around on a day-to-day basis anyway, like our phones. And so there's some newer platforms. And so one of those would actually be Farm Health Guardian, for example, that offers services to help bring all of that data that's already out there today together into a usable format. And so, as I mentioned, they, have the option to follow your cell phone, around if you're going into properties that are geofenced or, within company systems, or it could use existing GPS technology. Let's say you've got fleet vehicles that already have a GPS system in them. They can tap into that information, and it goes from hiding somewhere in the company software, and maybe you have to go dig for it and manually track that information. Now, all of a sudden, we can integrate that data, get it in a more usable platform, and be more proactive when it comes to our biosecurity. And we can see when deviations occur to the rules we have in place, and be able to react to those, versus maybe we have an outbreak and then are going back through the data on the backside, trying to understand, well, what went wrong, versus maybe knowing upfront.
Well, I feel like the technology part of that and being able to see that either in real time or as soon as possible after the movement occurred is so valuable, because you talked about the outbreak situation. That's a lot of times when we're digging into these things retrospectively, and we found out, no, the farm has PERS or PED. And so, of course, we're going to look at the transportation biosecurity schedule and the routing, right? And we may even have a specified route of where the driver was supposed to go. But if we're talking about this, weeks or maybe even a month in the rearview mirror, to be fair to the driver, they're probably not going to remember which gas station they stopped to use the restroom at that time. And so having that data electronically is valuable, number one, but then also the ability to look at it in close to real time and offer very fast feedback if we see something we don't like has to be pretty valuable too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And so a lot of it can come to, down to policing. Well, did the trailer in question actually go to the truck wash when it was supposed to for that downtime? Did it, is it following the right order? Did we take a trailer destined for gilt loads or something we keep, dedicated to a certain sow system? And did it end up taking a market load, when it wasn't supposed to, or something to that nature? And same thing with then tracking where drivers have been, if we've got downtime requirements for them. And all of those pieces can come together. And now all of a sudden, I found usually it's like, oh, we have that information, we have that data, but we might not be actually monitoring it the way that we think that we are and being as proactive with it. And so, in some of these cases, it's been very eye-opening how many quote unquote breaches or violations of what we think is going on could be happening today.
Salmonella presents significant challenges to pig health and performance and poses food safety risks to humans. As the first and only vaccine offering live attenuated strains of both Salmonella cholerae and Typhimurium, Enterosol Salmonella TC from Boehringer Ingelheim protects pigs against both serotypes with a single oral dose. Talk to your Boehringer Ingelheim representative to learn more.
When you mentioned that, some of those tools include the use of a geofence, I'm not very technologically advanced, but I've built a lot of fence in my days. Is a geofence something a producer builds on their own, or if they partner with like a Farm Health Guardian, is that a service that the Farm Health Guardian can provide for them?
That would be a provided service. And so great question. And so what happens is once you get integrated with their platform and you create logins and have an account and all of this is done electronically. And what they can do for your company and for your business is say what properties are important to you that are in your system and create a virtual fence. And so almost think of it, I know, like, a dog invisible fence or something to that nature, right? Like it might not be something physically there, but what we do know is when your cell phone or your vehicle enters or exits that geofence, then that's going to send information through the internet then back to the platform. So that way what's happening. And all of this can be customized. You create those fences, unique to those properties. It does take a little trial and error. There's, it's usually some times where you got to go through and make sure that the fence is right. You got the right property geofence. Otherwise, you'll get maybe false biosecurity breaches, and you just have to kind of sift through those. And so that does take a little bit of time. However, but it is unique to your business. You could also choose to geofence the car wash in town. You could geofence the packing plant. You can geofence Casey's if you want to. And some of the other unique thing is while you've got information relating to your system and you can see all of those movements of people entering and exiting, what's also helpful is the more people that use the same platform, you can tell. So myself, I'd be a third-party contractor, right? I might work with different clients. While client A can't tell exactly where I've been with client B, but if both are using Farm Health Guardian, they know whether or not I meet downtime requirements. If I was in a geofence of system B, it'll know that I was somewhere out of system for system A, for example. And so that's helpful when working with third-party contractors too. Maybe it's maintenance or trucking or vaccine crews or whatever the case may be. I think all of those things above and beyond transportation biosecurity are things we can build on for the future and have tools today that we can go do that with.
Control what we can control, and there are technology tools out there that help us to control things that we may perceive are uncontrollable today. That's really good information, Erin. I appreciate you coming on the podcast and sharing that with us.
Great. Thanks for having me, Clayton.
Yep. Well, thanks to our audience, Erin. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment. It takes 10 seconds to like the podcast. Give us a 5-star rating if you think Erin did a great job today. If you don't like the host, don't blame it on Erin. She did excellent. In all seriousness, for Dr. Erin Kettelkamp, my name's Dr. Clayton Johnson. It's been a pleasure to spend some time with you. This has been the Swine Health Blackbelt Podcast, and we hope you have a great rest of your day.